I know it's a bit cheeky, but I'm going to pop in a sequence of my own here. And this was the closing sequence of Blackadder Goes Forth. It's traditional in the Blackadder franchise to kill off the characters at the end of any series. The First War offers rather a convenient means of doing so. So, the story of the last recording was that they'd done the episode in one of the studios at the BBC Television Centre, and in another studio it was planned at the end of the day they would go over to this no man's land set and climb out of the trenches. This was designed to end the series. I've got the original footage and it may be worth seeing it. Action. The trouble was, what can an actor do once they've climbed out of the trench going, they're going to inevitably meet a barrage of German machine gun fire. There was going to be no blood, so all they could do was come out and freeze and pull faces of agony. As you can probably see, a lot of that footage is completely unusable. Rowan especially is very tired and quite pissed off by the whole thing. John Lloyd, who was the producer of the programme, was very worried in that he thought that he'd ruined the end of what he hoped would be another classic Blackadder series. There was no ending. So the next day I was called up and hastily brought into an emergency edit session to see what we could do to try to stretch these pictures over the roughly 40 seconds of Howard Goodall's music. How was the question? Well, slow motion is a very obvious answer, and we experimented a lot with speeds and mixing from one shot to another. Ideas went back and forwards on that morning. We even tried mixing some portrait photographs we had of the cast over the emergence from the trenches, but that didn't want to work. It sort of took away. But we realised that the slow motion was achieving some majesty. In other words, that the polystyrene was turning into a real threat the more we slowed it down. Slowing the sound down as well, so that the rat-tat-tat-tat of machine gun fire now achieved some sort of greater threat. All of these things started to come together. A word about that slow motion. Well, we were on analogue 1-inch machines, tape machines. Now, even though they could do slow motion, they weren't programmable. In other words, you couldn't say, well, I want that speed there, that speed there, that speed there, and they would do it every time. That didn't exist. All we had was radio spares faders almost to control the slow motion. And literally, director Richard Bowden, producer John Lloyd, myself and my assistant Neil Brown were all on these faders trying to persuade the machines to slow down in sequence as the vision mixer mixed from one picture to another. The one thing that bought us some more time was the fact that before the actors were cued out of the trench, I had a shot of the no man's land with nobody in it. So putting that at the end and mixing our characters now being covered in what now didn't look like polystyrene anymore, mixing to that shot before they came out meant that they sort of dissolved back into the landscape. Having got that idea, the next idea was, of course, what happens to the landscape 70, 80, 100 years later? Well, the cliched answer is a poppy field. So Neil Brown went upstairs to the BBC Stills Library, found several shots of poppy fields. We tried them one by one, and one of them just stood out as fantastic because it had roughly the same horizon line that could be imagined in our No Man's Land shot. Colour. We started in colour, we drifted to black and white, which meant that the still we had could start in black and white, and then I could bleed the colour in as the red of the poppies started to shine through. The other decision that was made that day was the fact that there was going to be no credits. I had to steal the Blackadder caption from the opening titles, put that in the bottom left-hand corner and superimpose the date and the copyright, which was a legal obligation from the BBC's point of view. And the last thing we did that morning was to put some birdsong right at the end, just to emphasize the peaceful nature of the landscape into which it had turned from the trench warfare of the First War. It's worth having a look at it.
Sir?
Yes, Lieutenant?
I'm scared, sir.
I'm scared too, sir.
I mean, I'm the last of the tiddly-winking leapfroggers from the golden summer of 1914. I don't want to die. Really, not over keen on dying at all, sir.
How are you feeling, darling?
Not all that good, Blackadder. Rather hoped I'd get through the whole show. Go back to work at Pratt & Sons. Keep wicket for the Croydon gentleman. Married Doris. Made a note in my diary on the way here. Simply says, bugger.
Well, quite. Come on, let's move.
Fix bayonets!
Don't forget your stick, Lieutenant.
Rather, sir. Wouldn't want to face a machine gun without this.
Listen, our guns have stopped.
You don't think...
Maybe the war's over. Maybe it's peace.
Oh, hurrah! The big knobs have got round the table and yanked the iron out of the fire.
Thank God. We lived through it. The Great War, 1914 to 1917.
Hip, hip, hooray!
I'm afraid not. The guns have stopped because we're about to attack. Not even our generals are mad enough to shell their own men. They think it's far more sporting to let the Germans do it.
So we are, in fact, going over. This is, as they say, it.
I'm afraid so. Unless I can think of something very quickly.
Company, 1 pace forward.
Oh, there's a nasty splinter on that ladder, sir. A bloke could hurt himself on that.
Stand ready.
I have a plan, sir.
Really, Baldrick? A cunning and subtle one?
Yes, sir.
As cunning as a fox who's just been appointed Professor of Cunning at Oxford University?
Yes, sir.
On the signal, company will advance.
Well, I'm afraid it'll have to wait. Whatever it was, I'm sure it was better than my plan to get out of this by pretending to be mad. I mean, who would have noticed another madman around here? Good luck, everyone.